My name is Christy Calbos. As Brian said, I am the owner of Calbos Law Firm. It is a special education law practice. I'm based in Atlanta, but I serve the whole state, and I help parents of special needs children navigate IEPs, 504 plans, anything really that has to do with special education in a public school. And today I'm so excited to be invited by Focus to talk about what I think 10 essential things are that parents should know about IEPs. And so I look forward to giving you this information and answering any questions. So at the very end of the presentation, I'm going to leave ample time. You can write your questions down. You can enter them in the chat. We're navigating some new technology, so we're going to do the best that we can. But I'm really excited to be with you here today. All right, so Brian, you give me the thumbs up when the PowerPoint is ready to go. Fabulous, I'm getting the thumbs up. Okay, so everybody should be seeing my title page, which is 10 Essential Things Parents Should Know About IEPs. That's my contact information there, and I think Jade sent out an email with a copy of this PowerPoint. If you didn't get one and you'd like one, just send Jade or Brian an email and they'll be happy to get it out to you. So I talked a little bit about my law firm and what I do. That's just an explanation, and here's just a slide that talks about a disclaimer. I'm not really giving specific legal advice for you, and if you believe that you need advice from a doctor or a lawyer, please do so. This is just for informational purposes. So IEP, it stands for Individual Education Program. And for me, it stands for I Expect Progress, and it should for you as well. So let's talk about the 10 things that we're going to go over today. I'm going to teach you how to make sure these 10 things are done. So let's start with number 1. IEPs are flexible documents, and they can be changed frequently. So even though you have an annual IEP, you can change the IEP as frequently as it needs to be changed. Number 2, IEPs are built on what your child needs to learn. And so how do we know what your child needs to learn? Well, we're going to have more on this later. Third thing I would like parents to know, IEP goals, the actual goals are the building blocks. And those goals determine what kind of services and placement your child will receive. Okay? Number 4, IEP goals must be properly written. If we don't have properly written IEP goals, then our building blocks are shaky at best. And number 5, our IEP goals really need to be properly monitored and measured. I'm going to show you today how to do that, how to become really a whiz at monitoring those goals and measuring them. Sixth thing that I would love parents to know is that IEPs, just like the I stands for individual, they really need to be individualized. I would love to teach everyone, every parent I come in contact with, how to make sure that your child's IEP is a custom fit for what they need to learn, and the types of services and the placement are customized for those goals. Seventh thing, the way IEP meetings are set up, they are orchestrated in a way that allow you to be an equal contributor to the discussion. So your role as an eager learner and a team member means that you, as a mom, dad, guardian, grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, you really need the knowledge and the preparation so that you can ask questions. And today I'll talk about how to get information, how to review literature, and how to look at evidence that your child is making progress. Eighth thing of our list of 10, IEP accommodations. Who's familiar with the accommodations page in an IEP? I bet many of you are used to looking at that list and wondering, are the accommodations being implemented? Are they being followed? Those are mandatory. They're not voluntary. Unless the accommodation is worded in a specific way, such as when needed or as needed or at the request of the student, then our IEP accommodations have to be implemented. Ninth thing on our list that we'll talk about today, IEP services are not determined by what just happens to be available at the school or what fits within a schedule or availability. Again, we have our IEP services, and they are really set aside and reserved for our children, not based on convenience. And the 10th thing we'll talk about today, that IEPs are like legal contracts. They're basically a promise by the school that those services will be implemented. And when they're not implemented, when they're not followed, your child's legal rights might be in jeopardy. So we'll talk a little bit about that today too. Okay, so let's get started. And what I'd like to do is take us through a timeline, what to do prior to the meeting. And again, you'll have a copy of this PowerPoint, so don't feel like you have to take a lot of notes, but this is really a fabulous resource for you if you ever want to refer back to this and figure out, well, what do I need to do before I go to a meeting? The first is that we want to get any outside or private evaluations and expertise on board. So if you have private providers, we want to check with them to find out what should we be working on in the coming school year. Next thing, we'd like to ask for a draft copy of the school's IEP, and I usually like to ask for that about a week in advance of the meeting. Okay, you want to get a copy of the current IEP, any testing reports, any observation reports by school teachers or related service providers. And then what you want to do is sit down at the table or the desk and really compare the current IEP with the draft IEP. You want to compare what's missing or what's been changed. And the final tip that I have for you is that if they've proposed any new placements, classrooms, a new school location, try to make an arrangement to schedule a time to go and visit that. It's a good idea for you to see it before you go into the meeting, just so you have an idea of, the teacher and the layout of the classroom. It helps give you a level of comfort if you're going to be asked to agree to something at the meeting. If you've seen it before, it certainly gives you a much deeper feeling of peace. Peace of mind is what we're really after here. Okay, now I have some tips that I usually teach, and that is try not to go to a meeting alone. Try to take a friend or an advocate or even a member of your child's provider team. Helps to have someone else with you to take notes, to bounce ideas off of. I usually tell parents, try to discuss and work out any issues that you have in advance of the meeting. Those meetings tend to be short and really efficient. So if you have any really difficult issues that you want to work out, try to do that before you get into the meeting. And finally, obviously, I represent the position that an annual IEP meeting is serious. It's like a business meeting. So we really want to be fully prepared. Before you go, write up what your parental concerns are. And this is a section on the IEP that will allow you to talk about what's working, in your opinion, what you think needs to be improved, and what is your vision? What are your hopes and dreams and your goals for your child? What you want to do is you want to look at the strengths and weaknesses section of the draft IEP, the needs and the strengths. Take a look at those. And then maybe jot down some of your own ideas. What are your own goals and objectives that you think that your child should work on for the next year? Now, granted, few of us are trained educators or speech therapists or occupational therapists. So we're not really always coming at this exercise from the standpoint of a professional educator, SLP or OT, but it's still a great idea for you to get in the habit of just jotting down things that you think are important to work on. And remember that if your child has special considerations, perhaps we're looking at dyslexia or Tourette's or significant behavior challenges or medical needs, please don't hesitate to ask for the district's expert. Maybe that's the school nurse, a healthcare professional, maybe a reading specialist. Ask them to attend the meeting if you think that's needed. Here are some resources that I'm not going to go over in great detail, but I wanted to list these for you. There are some bullet points there that will help you become the expert on your child's educational advocacy rights. Okay, and I also recommend that you join any listservs and Facebook groups so that you can really bond with other parents so you don't have to journey this alone. Final tips. What you want to do is you want to take a step back and say, how is my child doing compared to typically developing children? What are the progress monitoring methods that schools use? How do teachers determine if your child is making progress? And test scores. Here's two resources for you, the National Center on Student Progress Monitoring and the Research Institute on Progress Monitoring. So helpful. A whole world will open to you when you begin to realize how progress is determined. What we want to do is make sure that you've got a binder, and that binder, that notebook at home, it could be a 3-hole punch notebook, that it has all of your child's education records, including raw data. Now, what do I mean by raw data? Those are work samples, or they are data collection sheets on the IEP goals and objectives. And then take a look at the meeting notice. Sometimes you'll just get an email from someone that says, hey, can you come to a meeting? But you really should get a meeting notice with purpose. What's the purpose of the meeting? What are we getting together for? Who's coming? And how long do we have? Now, a rule of thumb, to really go deep and be thorough for your annual IEP meeting, you should block off about 3 hours. And that's to give everybody time to stretch, take breaks, so that we're not rushing and we're not glossing over any important areas. And that's just a general rule of thumb. There's no law that says that an IEP meeting has a minimum or a maximum amount of time. But I generally like to leave a comfortable space, a comfortable window. Now, if you're doing an amendment IEP, which is in between the annual meetings, those can be shorter, just depending on what you need to talk about. Quickly take a look at your child's grades and then organize. Get yourself really organized. This is a great step in empowerment. And then analyze it. Really treat it like it's a work project. You're going in, and there you are. You're all prepared for the IEP meeting. Cover me, I'm going in. Okay, second thing that we're going to talk about today on our list of 10. We have to have the correct present levels of performance. So I've given you some citations here from the law, and the law can be dry and boring, but essentially the IEP really needs to nail the current state of events with your child's education. We need to know exactly where your child is performing on standard curriculum objectives as well as functional performance. So how are we doing with tying our shoes, or indicating what we want to eat, or expressing our desires, right? How are we doing on, colors, numbers, reading, whatever it is that your child's working on, we need to know where we are now. Because if we're setting up an IEP that is designed to last for 1 year, we need to know where we're starting so that we can set a great end goal. What's the target a year from now? If we know where we are now, then we know how ambitious that goal needs to be. How much territory can we cover in 1 year? That present levels section is super important. How do we arrive at the present levels? How do we get there? How do we know where your child is? Well, we first look at a comprehensive evaluation. Okay. Those are standardized tests. Sometimes they are curriculum-based. Ask your teacher, sit down with your child's teachers and ask them, what are we using in the classroom? What type of current classroom-based measurements are you using? Could I look at a work sample, or 2 or 3 or 4? Could I review the records? But a comprehensive evaluation involves all of these things. So that's key, and we usually do a comprehensive evaluation once every 3 years. So these are all of the components of a comprehensive evaluation. And if you disagree with the district's comprehensive evaluation, you can request an independent one. And your parent rights talk a lot about how to do that. So if you refer to the parent right brochure or the parent right handout, you can even find that online at the Georgia Department of Education. it'll walk you through how to request an independent evaluation. But this is the starting point for figuring out where is your child's current performance. Okay. Now, this is an interesting list of every area that your child can receive specialized instruction in. Okay, so take a look at it. Functional skills, how do we function? Right? Toileting, we're talking about dressing, we're talking about feeding, all of those functional skills, just to function in everyday life. Behavior, communication, social skills, huge piece of IEPs. Should have some great social skills in there. How to have a great conversation with back and forth. Academic, we're all familiar with that. Study skills, that's an important piece. Attention, how well does your child pay attention? How long can your child pay attention for? We work on those skills. We work on, maybe if we start with 1 minute, we want to expand it to 10 to 20 minutes without prompting. We want to talk about fine motor, which is handwriting, opening and closing containers, tying shoes, and of course sensory. We want to talk about their present levels of performance with any sensory needs. So here's an example of a very specific way to write in the IEP a level of performance. Look how specific this is. Our student Jonathan can read words in isolation and in context, meaning just a standalone word and also in a sentence. And he can read words that contain short vowels and a silent E. But the teacher's noting for us here, he's only able to read the vowel teams, E-I, E-Y, E-E, and the diphthongs, O-U, O-Y. Look how specific she is there. In isolation, standing alone, at 30% accuracy. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us a strength, that he can read those words with the short vowels and the silent E. But you know what? We're lagging behind on those vowel teams. This is a great example of how specific we are about strengths and weaknesses. So then what would we do? We'd write a goal for him to be able to read the vowel teams and the diphthongs in isolation. We would address that specific need. Now the present level should always note the baseline information, right? So what we really want to know is numbers. As a special ed attorney, coaching parents, so important to me that everybody know their numbers. Okay. Present levels of performance are based on data, and I have a bullet point here for you, data, data, data. Let's get copies of those raw data worksheets, those work samples, those in-class assessments. When the teacher sits down with your child for her individual one-on-one IEP goals work, whether she does this daily or every other day or weekly, we want to see how your child's doing when they're working together. And there are various ways to monitor progress. So make a time to chat with your teacher and ask, I'm just very curious, how are we doing the progress monitoring? Could you share that with me? Now, here is a higher level skill for all you parents that love technology. If you like Excel, if you really like to see things visually, I know I do. Take a look at this graph and let's take a look at what happened. The green is 2008. The orange, if you can see that, it's kind of a orange color, is 2009, and that rust color is 2010. All right, GORT is a reading measurement, G-O-R-T. That's one of the ways that we test reading. Well, look at how we did with our rate of reading. In 2008, we were at like a 4.3. Look at that first bar there. Well, but then we dropped with our rate of reading. Okay, and now we're even lower in 2010. We dropped from about a 4.4 to a 2. And that speaks volumes, doesn't it? They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Okay, so you graphed that because now you know this is where you were because you had the numbers and you were able to compare year by year. Accuracy. How accurate is your child's reading? Well, you can take a look at that. We had 2.5 in 2008. We had 2.5 in 2009. 2010 we dropped. Okay. Same thing with fluency. we're seeing a drop, a decline in comprehension. How well is your child comprehending, understanding, making sense? So what we're seeing is a decline here, and what you would do if you were at an IEP meeting, and again, this is just data from 2008 through 2010, you would use current data, so you would use maybe 18, 19, and 2020. But that's pretty impactful when you present that to a team and you say, guys, I'm really concerned. We seem to be in a steady state of decline here on everything except accuracy. Accuracy stayed the same, and we need to be going up. We want to see the numbers climbing, not declining. Okay. Going to just give you this as part of your PowerPoint presentation. These are the components of reading, and they're very, very important. And I love parents to understand this. So when you're understanding, reading is often a huge area of concern, and when you understand the different pieces of reading, they're puzzles that fit together so that your child can be a strong reader. And I encourage parents to understand that. That way you can go in and create goals on each of these components, wherever your child is struggling. Final thing, here are some other resources for you that you can look up in your on your own time, but these are examples of scientifically based instruction. That's a requirement in IEPs. We have to have scientifically based instruction. So I listed some websites for you there. All right, so many parents say to me, I am feeling really anxious about these meetings. I really don't understand what's happening. It feels like it's going by at the speed of light. And so one of the things I tell parents is just take a deep breath and set aside 15, 20 minutes a week, if you can carve that out, to continue to teach yourself, okay? The most important thing for your IEP, right, once you've understood your present levels of performance, is that your IEP have great goals and objectives. And as we talked about before, we really want to base our goals on what does your child need. The goal is matched up to a need. And I'm a firm believer that every need your child has that is, critical for success in public school must have a goal to match it. All right. Now, some parents say, well, Christy, if I did that, I'd have, 30 goals. Well, we do have to prioritize, but there are many times when what we're working on can simply be met through an accommodation. So really take a close look at every need, and then, of course, you can prioritize. What are the most important critical skills that we're working on this year? One final point that I have for you about goals from prior years. Remember when you're sitting down at your table or your desk and you're comparing your former IEP with the new IEP. And remember we said we were going to look to find out what's missing or what's been changed. If your child's goal, if a particular goal, let's say it was math or reading or handwriting or communication, social skills, it doesn't matter what the goal was, but if it wasn't actually mastered last school year, it's important to understand why. Ask the teacher, why wasn't that mastered? Where did we run into a stumbling block? And then you and the team make decisions on what needs to be done moving forward. We don't just want to toss out goals that weren't mastered and go to a brand new IEP every year if we're not really targeting those fundamental skills. And sometimes we get very close to mastery. Let's say that the percentage was that we wanted to do it 80% of the time, and we get to 70%. Sometimes a teacher will explain, 70% is fabulous, or I'm going to continue working on that goal. And sometimes the teacher will say, I'd like to take that fundamental skill and morph it into a new type of goal, and that's fine too. But the most important thing for you as a parent or a guardian is to understand why the goal wasn't mastered, what got in the way. And let's make some decisions about whether we're going to keep it, morph it into something different, or if we're going to discard it and create something new. Here are my favorite resources for you to look at examples of goals and objectives. So many times parents say, but I wouldn't know what a goal would look like, or can you give me some ideas or some examples? The best IEP goals and objectives bank, it's like a bank or a clearinghouse of goals, is right there for you. Okay, so you want to look that up. Don't hit print because it will use all of your ink and all of your paper. It's hundreds of pages long. But these are fabulous to look up and just bookmark, and you'll get great ideas. And of course, you'll have to tweak them to be customized to your child's needs. But they open up a whole world of possibility and excitement for parents when they start to see all the different goals out there. And it gives you an inside look at how teachers select and speech pathologists and OTs, how they select goals. Here's a checklist. You can refer back to this when you're sitting down to look at each goal. Is it specific? Right? What exactly is being taught? Let's get super specific. And how many prompts do we need? Or is this going to be a goal that we master with total independence? Measurable. Remember, we talked about what's our starting point and then what's our end point. Can we measure it? Do we know where we are now and where we're going? Assigning. Who's being assigned the job of teaching this skill? Might be several people. Could be the teacher and the speech therapist. Could just be the occupational therapist. Realistic. R stands for realistic and relevant. Is it realistic to expect that we can learn this in 1 year? And is it relevant? Is this something that my child actually needs? And then T, this T in SMART, S-M-A-R-T, SMART goals. How long are we going to give my child to learn this? And usually it's 1 year. That seems to be the standard, but there are times when we set a goal for 6 months and then we decide, let's meet back in 6 months and create another goal to piggyback off of this. That's called just going through developmental stages, right? Sometimes we have to master the first step of a 5-step process. And so we'll break it down and say, let's work on this goal for 3 months and master it. And then we'll come back to the IEP meeting table and create a second goal and a third goal. Okay. Fourth step, right? Fourth thing that we really want to know as parents is IEPs must have supplemental aids and services. And I see a typo there. It says IEPs MUT, M-U-T, should have an S. Sorry about that. IEPs must have supplemental aids and services. Okay? Now these are provided in, and I underlined the key sections for you so that you can sort of hone in. They're just supports in regular ed or any other setting. Okay? So in the lunchroom, in homeroom, in the hallways, in the gym, and also in any extracurricular or non-academic settings. Now these are important because they support successful inclusion in your child's school. So what do? We say these are services and aids and supports that can either be given directly to your kiddo or to your child's teacher or even to other children in the class, all to help your child be successfully included. So what does that mean? It could look like training, could look like professional development, can be given to the teacher or the paraprofessional or to a related service provider. And by the way, related service provider is what the law calls service providers who provide any type of related service other than instruction. So that could be an occupational therapist, music therapist, speech language therapist. So supplemental aids and services are very important, and the reason this is so near and dear to my heart is because we really want your child successfully included in regular education, if that's appropriate. We want them included in the lunchroom, in gym, in the hallways, transitions, assemblies, field trips, any type of clubs, extracurricular classes. So this section of the IEP is important. Now, this is one of my favorite slides. Here are examples of what you can ask for your child. And many of you probably already have these in your child's IEP. Adapted equipment, maybe a special seat or an adapted spoon. How about assistive technology? You could have a laptop, any type of software or a communication system. And again, training. Supplemental aids and services can be so important when we're training the staff or our student or even you as parents. Did you know that parents can request and receive training in communication, in OT, in physical therapy, even positive behavior supports. Positive behavior supports are important because you really want to be doing the same thing at home that they're doing at school. So you can use the same behavior plan and the same language. So all of that is available to you, and this is a great checklist to visit when you are going back into an IEP meeting, your next IEP meeting, and you're asking for these things. These are examples. Not everything is going to be appropriate for your child. Again, it's customized and it's individual. There's some more. Peer helpers. A one-on-one paraprofessional is a supplemental aid and service. Any type of adapted materials. Do we need audiobooks? Do we need textbooks with large print or highlighted paper? Do we need to actually build in collaboration and consult, amongst the staff? Do you need a special ed teacher or a nurse or a reading coach or an autism expert to come in and collaborate and consult with the teachers, with you, maybe with other professionals, speech therapist? And finally, we have social skills assistants. An example of that would be that the school would provide a social skills group, time to practice all those skills of talking about what's important to us, learning to listen, and take turns when we talk. All right, we are moving along here. We're making great progress. We are on number 6 of the top 10 things that I love parents to know about IEPs. And we're talking about student supports and accommodations, and this is the big buzzword, accommodations. They level the playing field. Let's talk about accommodations. Now, they don't actually change the school's requirement for mastery. So if everyone is asked to do the task the same way, it doesn't change the requirement. We don't lower the bar. But you know what? We change the way we walk up to it, the way we approach it. So what accommodations are for? This is such plain language. I love this description. It just allows your child to show what he or she knows, even with a disability. It does not give us an advantage over other kiddos, but it does accommodate our disability by placing us at the same starting point. So if you imagine a football field, and we're told, okay, the requirement is to run to the other end of the football field. Now, this is just an example. We're not literally going to line up on a football field and run, but you want your child to have their toes right there on the edge of the starting line, right, at the goalpost, just like every other child. So an accommodation does a wonderful thing by accommodating your child, maybe giving them that extra boost so that they can get right up to the starting line. And when we're ready to go, your child's at the same starting point. So it levels that playing field. All right. So I often am asked by parents, what are the different types of accommodations? Here they are. And this is available to you as a resource, so you can come back and check this. But first we would look at, well, how are we actually presenting the information? Can we change the way that it's given by the teacher? Does your child need audiobooks versus text? How about response? That's a type of accommodation. Can your child change the way that they are demonstrating what they know? So maybe we have a child that is better at speaking the answers instead of writing, if handwriting is a struggle. Setting, where do we actually work or test? This is a common one. Maybe we pull our child out of the main classroom for testing so we can have some quiet and less distraction. Maybe we're going to do our reading lessons in a small group rather than a class of 20. So the setting can be accommodated. And then timing and scheduling. Do we need to do extended time on tests or assignments or homework? Do we need to add in breaks? How do we want to schedule? We can accommodate all of these things. How we present the work, how your child answers in class and shows what they know, where your child works, okay, how your child works, and the timing and the scheduling. See how flexible we are here with accommodations. Lots of good wiggle room, because really what we're getting at is just leveling the playing field so that your child has an equal opportunity. Here's some insider tips for you. I've been doing this a really long time. I've been an attorney for 17 years in special education, so I want to give you my hot tips, insider tips. Make sure that the accommodations are applied in all settings. Now, what do I mean by that? They should be really applied everywhere you go throughout the school building. Okay, let's include assistive tech. How exciting is it that we have technology? And I mean, this is an example that I'm here able to share with you today, but assistive tech is so important. There are so many exciting new advances. So let's include those, really push the envelope. I encourage you to ask the assistive technology specialist to attend your child's IEP meeting. Let's look and see what new and exciting things are out there. Let's include homework. Let's accommodate that homework. Is it too much? Is it too little? Is it a struggle for you to do with your child at home? And let's make sure in the accommodations that the teacher's wording of what is a test, right, is actually defined. So if we're going to give extra time on a test, we may not want to just call it a test because every teacher might have a slightly different way of naming a test. They may call it a formative, a summative, or a quiz. So when we're talking about accommodations, defining them very specifically is important. So when you're at the meeting and you're looking at the list of accommodations, just look at them one by one and ask, okay, is this super specific and can it be applied in all settings? Are we going to make any exceptions? And if so, we want to be very detailed and we want to write it into the IEP exactly how we're going to have it. It's like an instruction manual for your kiddo. Okay. Now, a common accommodation is that your child would get copies of the teacher's notes or other children's notes or maybe even study guides. So here's the key. You don't want it blank. You don't want a study guide that's blank, or you don't want notes that still have to be filled in, like if they're templates. You actually want the IEP to say that you'll receive a complete copy of it, right? Because that'll help your child study. As opposed to what I often see as parents saying, Christy, oh my gosh, I don't know how to complete the study guide. I wasn't in class. So it's very important in your IEP that you note a complete copy. Somebody's already filled it out for you. And then finally, if you're going to give extra time as an accommodation, like an extra day for homework or time and a half for doing an in-class assignment, let's be super specific. So, as you know, sometimes homework is due 1 day later, 2 days later, 3 days later. It depends on your child's school schedule. So I gave you some examples there of how to get very specific about it. Now, I hope you guys can see that this is why I love IEP meetings that give us enough time to do everything. See how specific we're getting? And we really have to be prepared, and we have to have our caffeine, and we have to have enough time at the meeting to dive in deep and write out the specifics like this. Okay, number 7. IEPs must have related services in them to meet your child's needs. If your child has needs in speech or any area like physical therapy, occupational therapy, I listed some examples for you here. We're all familiar with speech. Maybe we're familiar with audiology services and maybe an interpreter or a translator. But did you also know that you can request psychological services? And of course, physical therapy, occupational therapy, recreation, including therapeutic recreation, and counseling services can be written into the IEP. We can look at rehabilitation counseling. We can look at orientation and mobility services. So the sky's the limit on related services. The only caveat that I have, the only little tip that I have is that it does need to be related to school. How does your child perform at school? So that we don't overlap with anything that's happening at home or in the community. Has to be related to their academic needs, and not just, you know, reading, writing, arithmetic, right? We're also looking at communication. We're looking at social skills. We're looking at adaptive functioning. So it's really important that we understand all the list of related services. A lot of people don't realize that psychological services, recreation therapy, and counseling services are an important part of IEPs. Here's some more examples. Medical services. Now, of course, many of us being avid fans of Focus and Fragile, we know that we can have related services for diagnostic or evaluation purposes. You can also request school health services and school nurse services. I'm sure we're all familiar with those. Social work services. Parent counseling and training. This is one of my favorites. Did you know that you can ask the IEP to contain parent counseling and training on your child's disability and on your child's IEP? This is a fabulous resource. Many IEP teams are not familiar with what this looks like, so you have to creatively help them brainstorm. Sometimes you might say, well, could I get together with the speech therapist twice, maybe for 20 minutes each meeting, and learn the language that she uses with my child to work on these speech goals or these communication goals? Or maybe you might want to ask the occupational therapist to maybe film herself with her iPhone and send you a short video of how she does the handwriting tasks, or the shoe tying tasks, or the zipping and the buttoning. Right? So parent counseling and training on behavior is important. Do you need to meet with the behaviorist or the teacher for 30 minutes, maybe one time? This is usually not an ongoing process. This is usually just a couple of sessions to get you trained up and really, really proficient in your child's IEP so that you can work on some of those things at home. Okay, another related service and example is music therapy and transportation. A lot of people don't realize that transportation is categorized. The bus is categorized as a related service. So everything that happens in the school building should be happening on the bus, right? So if we need a behavior plan on the bus, we can have one. If we need oversight and monitoring, if we need health services on the bus, all of that's available. And then finally, another related service is tutoring. Does your child need extra tutoring in order to make academic progress or social skills progress, communication progress? Sometimes the regular school day, the length of the regular school day is not sufficient for your child to make progress, and they're really struggling. So we might consider adding some time in the morning or the afternoons, evenings, weekends. Of course, we could look at that over the summer as well. All right, making progress here. We're on number 8. Thanks for hanging in with me. We are at my tip for what you should actually bring to the meeting. All right. I would love parents to bring a way to record that meeting. Okay, so you want this to be probably digital only. You can record in the state of Georgia without telling someone that you're recording. This state has an unusual law where one person can record without telling others, but I recommend that you just tell the team we're going to be recording. These days with smartphones or voice-activated digital recorders, you can pick those up at Best Buy or on Amazon. It's very common for parents to record the meeting because they like to listen back to it, or they like to have someone else listen to it, maybe your spouse or a significant other, or even one of your child's private providers would like to listen to a specific section of the meeting. And my tip for you, if you're in a meeting that's a couple hours long, is just stop it. Stop that recording every 45 to 60 minutes. And just say, like for instance, I would just say, we're moving into goals now. And that way you just have 3 mini recordings instead of 1 3-hour recording. So if you ever have to listen back to it, you're not fumbling and slogging through several hours of the recording to find the exact section. So I like to just break my recordings up into the natural breaking points. Like, okay, now we're talking about present levels. So I'll stop the recording and then I'll restart it and say, now we're moving into goals. And I'll stop the recording when we're done with that, restart it and say, now we're moving into supports and services. So that way I at least have a way to quickly jump into the recording if I need to listen back for clarification. Okay, obviously bring your records, bring your notebook, get organized and get your 3-ring binder together and categorize everything, put all of your IEPs together, put all of your evaluations together, put all of your progress reports together. You should be getting IEP progress reports every 9 weeks. And those are progress reports on the goals, okay? And then maybe put all your medical records in one section of your notebook, but bring all that with you to the meeting. And then please bring pictures or videos of your child. It's so helpful to teachers and to speech therapists and occupational therapists when they see your child being able to do something or struggle with something, maybe at home or in the car or outside in the yard, or, you know, in any community setting that you're in, or, you know, whether you're, you know, even over at grandma's house or the neighbor's house. It's very helpful for them to see, oh, we need to work on the ability to generalize this skill, to transfer this skill, so that we're just as good with this skill, right, in other settings, not just at school. That's really important for our children. Okay, number 9, we talked about what needs to be done before the meeting. We talked about what happens during the meeting in terms of content. And we talked about what we need to do to actually pack our bags and get to the meeting. We want to bring pictures, we want to bring our records, we want to bring examples of your parent concerns and goals that you really want. We want that data, okay? And then what do we do during the meeting? Well, this is a collaborative process, so we really want to work closely together. You're an equal member of that team, which means that your input is so important. A well-informed, professional presentation by a parent is just so empowering. And it really helps the team feel that you are on board and that you're eager to learn. So, of course, because it's a business meeting, we're professional, we're courteous, we're trying not to interrupt, we're listening. I do a lot of listening. I do a lot of asking of questions. Who would be responsible for that, or who can I call about that? I ask questions, what does that mean? You know, what does that look like when you're teaching that in the classroom? What exactly is that component of math or reading or communication? I ask where do they do that type of instruction? Where in the classroom is my child sitting? Or where in the lunchroom are we seated? Then I ask why. And I just ask the teachers or the therapist, why is that important, or why are we choosing to do it that way? Or can you help me understand why we're not going to focus on that right now? And then I always ask when. I know, when do we anticipate this being mastered, or when will that service be provided? Are we going to do speech on Mondays, Wednesdays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays? When do you come into the classroom to give occupational therapy? How many children are in the group? And then a very important question is, how often are you working on that goal? You know, are you working on it once a week, twice a week, once a month? That's important, because if we really want to see mastery, frequency is important. And finally, take a deep breath during the meeting and take lots of breaks if you need them. You can step out, you can have a little snack. Be sure to keep your blood sugar, you know, stable during the meetings. Call people if you need help, and just remember to stay calm, that this is a flexible document. If you're in the meeting and it doesn't feel like it's going well, or you feel confused, or you're just exhausted because you had a late night, maybe you were up with your child, or you're just not on your A game that day, just remember, you can call another IEP meeting. You can always have a second shot at developing the IEP. It's not set in stone. Okay. So in the IEP meeting, what can you ask for? This is the 10th tip. We've reached the 10th. You can ask for a free, appropriate public education. Appropriate, unfortunately, is not the Cadillac. We're not going to be getting the best education, but we will get an appropriate one for your child. You can ask for parent training, remember? Wanted to highlight that. You can ask for parent training with occupational therapy, physical therapy, behavioral supports, speech language, even how to work on the goals. Assistive tech, ask for that. Just reminding everybody, technology is so key for our kids. Books, you can ask for books, a copy of books. We're going online with many instructional materials, but if you need hard copies of books, go ahead and ask for them. That's important. You can ask for social emotional goals. Let's work on social skills, emotional skills. Let's look at some goals and objectives. You can ask for groups, or you can ask for a counselor. You can even ask for facilitated instruction. Like, let's say we're going out on the playground and we don't really know how to play with our peers. You can ask that that be facilitated. You know, when we're in the gym, let's say we need instruction and we're not going to get adaptive physical education, but we need somebody to help us. You can facilitate that. The teachers and the SLPs and the OTs can facilitate it. And of course, you can ask for transportation. And it's not just that you're asking for the bus, but you're asking for what happens on the bus. Are we covering all of our medical needs? Are we covering our social skills needs, our behavior needs? Sometimes children need, if they're on the bus for a long time, we might need to make sure that their blood sugar is stable. So lots of great things you can ask for in the meeting. Okay. You can also ask for, and this is really key, some meaningful parent communication on a daily basis. Now, by meaningful, I mean, what's important for you to know? The teachers sometimes are using a template, a daily behavior sheet or a daily communication log or an agenda. If that's not exactly giving you the information that you'd like to know, you can certainly meet with your teacher and ask him or her, would you mind revising this a little bit? Could we add a section down here at the bottom or on the right-hand column? And we don't want to bombard our staff and have them write, 3 or 4 paragraphs every day. So sometimes it's helpful to have little tick boxes, but you can help design that. And if your teacher is open and willing to do it, sometimes it makes a world of difference, because if you're wondering, well, how much water did my child drink? Or why didn't they finish their sandwich? Or did we have any toileting accidents? Or did we have great behavior during these particular segments of the day? Or was my child really sleepy? Whatever information is meaningful for you, especially if you have a child with medical needs or health needs, sometimes it's important to kind of custom design your daily communication log, going back and forth between home and school. And you can explain to your teacher or to the speech therapist or the parapro exactly why that information is important. You can also ask for privacy. You don't have to agree that your private providers and your clinics, your private clinics and agencies speak with the school folks, but there are pros and cons to that. You can ask for privacy, but we want to make sure that we also have a good exchange of information, because we're all on the same team, the team of your child, obviously. And so you might want to speak with an advocate, or you're welcome to ask me if you'd like. You can connect with me by email or on Facebook about the pros and the cons of how much information is good information to let go back and forth between school and private providers. You can ask for things to be free. We love that word. You really, parents aren't charged for anything related to your child receiving an appropriate education. FAPE, FAPE, stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. Now, there's one exception to that, and that is a copy of your child's education records. Usually districts will give one set of records each year free. But if you keep asking for a set again and again, they do have the ability to charge you. And if you're asking for something called open records under an open records request, then the law does allow them to charge you for those records. Those are different than just general education records, special education records. Open records have to do with things like emails, internal memos, and things of that nature. Okay, what else can you ask for? You can actually ask that all of your concerns be documented in the actual IEP document itself. All right, so here's an insider tip for you. When you're writing up your parent concerns, like we talked about earlier, and you're talking about what your hopes and your visions are and your concerns and the areas you'd like to see improvement in, you can put them on a flash drive, okay? And you can take them to the meeting, or you can just email them in advance, or you could take copies of them to the meeting so that you can share them. And you certainly can say, hey guys, I'd really like my parent concerns to be copied and pasted or typed verbatim, word for word into the IEP. I don't want them summarized or glossed over. Okay, final thing you can ask for is you can actually say, okay, we're at the end of our meeting. Could someone please read back to me all of the meeting minutes? Or could I look over someone's shoulder and make sure that they're accurate? Now, this is an unusual request for a meeting that felt like it went really well, because typically we would not have concerns about accuracy, about what we decided in the meeting or what decisions were made. But many parents say to me, Christy, you know, I got home and a couple days later I got a copy of the IEP, and I was reading through the IEP and the meeting minutes, and I didn't see these important things that we decided, or I didn't see the level of detail that we went into about how this particular thing is going to work. And I didn't see my parent concerns reflected in the IEP the way that I said them. And so when I see those sorts of concerns from parents pop up, I say, well, next meeting, next go round, make sure you don't leave the meeting before you take a look at those minutes. Take a look at the IEP. Now, many times teams will say, well, we have to work on it and clean it up. We have spelling, you know, errors or grammatical errors, and it's not a final copy, and that's fine. But you really want to see if you can take a look at it while you're there, because many times by the time you're sent the final copy, the opportunity, and it depends on which district you're in, but the opportunity to make changes is no longer available to you. So you might get a final copy of the IEP and not be able to make any changes to it if you see that there are mistakes or if things were left out. So it's just a good idea whenever, and I just do this with any business meeting, if we've written down what we're working on as a member of a committee or a team in business and law and industry and in any type of corporation, we would certainly want somebody to show us in writing, oh, okay, this is what we talked about today. And you can do that in a nice way, in a very collaborative way. But it's just a great idea to say, would you mind if I took a look at what we worked on today? I just want to make sure that we've got everything documented. And I always give a lot of credit to whoever has to type up the IEP and make the notes. It's hard. It's a hard job. That software is often confusing, and lots of people are talking, and they don't have to write every word for word the way that it was said in the meeting. We're not looking for something like a court reporter transcript, but it is important that the high points be hit and accurately described. So that's the way you would handle that. All right, we'll have a bonus for you, and this is your documentation slide. This is how we just keep documentation of everything. My rule of thumb is that if it didn't happen in writing, then it didn't happen at all. So if you talked about something and we don't get it in writing, then we might as well assume that it probably wasn't talked about or discussed. And I know that seems really significant or strong, but it's so important because we're so busy these days. There's a huge amount of pressure on teachers, on parents, and oftentimes we talk about things and we forget. So we really want to keep a paper trail, and that's especially true of phone calls. So follow up with all phone calls with just in writing and just create that paper trail. So if you have a conversation and the teacher says they're going to do something or they're going to change something or there's a decision made, just send a quick email. Hi, Christy, it was great to talk to you today. I said this, you said that, you know, you said you'd call me next Friday. I look forward to hearing from you. That way you just keep a paper trail, and it helps with your memory because a lot of times I forget, well, what day did we talk and when did we talk about that? So I'm a big proponent of paper trails and documentation. Another bonus for your documentation is if you have anything important that you need the school to receive, I would hand deliver it or use certified mail. We're trying to get into a paperless society, but I think hand delivery of important documents or certified mail is critical just to make sure that they got it. Another tip that I have for you is keep a little journal or calendar. Go find, or if you have one at home, you can use one at home, or you could buy a journal or calendar that you devote just to your child. And you will note all your phone calls, and you can do this for your medical providers, your doctors. You may do this already, but you also would add your school personnel, any phone calls that you have, any time you deliver documents, any types of important meetings or discussions or emails. You just want to keep that journal or that calendar so that if you ever have to refer back to it, it's right there at a glance for you. And then finally, the documentation of anything that you feel like your child is struggling with. These are unaddressed needs. So you might have a private evaluation and you would document it, and you would really work hard at understanding with your private providers, okay, what exactly is the need that my child has and how do we approach it? How does a child learn to do this? Show me the steps of learning, and then you would document it in the IEP meeting. You'd say, my child needs to learn this skill. This is how I understand it. I received a private evaluation, or my private speech therapist or occupational therapist explained it to me this way. And then you want to document it in the IEP so that you have a record. We brought this up and we're not just letting it sort of slip and slide as we go through year to year. Okay, some more tips about documentation. Many parents have private evaluations, or they have medical reports, or they have data maybe from your home program. If you're running a home program, maybe an ABA therapy program at home, or you have someone come into your home, if there's anything relevant before you go to the IEP meeting, make sure you send it to the IEP team before you go, and just make sure that they read it before. Make sure the team has read it prior to getting into the meeting. There's a lot going on when we get into the meeting, and we don't have time to really sit and read data and digest it and make sense of it. The same is true for you, which is why I suggested that you ask for all the data up front so that you have plenty of time on the front end to get ready. If you just breeze on into the meeting and we haven't read everything, it's hard to have a good grasp and digest it and analyze it. Another thing that you could do is you could ask about the credentials of people who are working with your child. Sometimes parents say to me, Christy, I'm concerned because I don't know that maybe the parapro has been trained, or I don't know if this particular occupational therapist is used to dealing with or has experience dealing with my child's unique medical needs. Or I'm not sure that the new teacher this year, we're just getting started in a new school year, for instance, has ever taught children with my type of disability. And so there's a very polite, professional way to do that. You could just say, I would love to know more about your background, love to know more about your experience. As a parent, I'm always looking to learn, and I'm excited to meet people who have different skill sets, and you can also ask if they've ever actually worked with your child. If you show up at an IEP meeting and you see people who you've never met before, sometimes people are just attending for expertise because they can lend general expertise about what the district has to offer. Other times they're attending for administrative support. But you can certainly say, well, have you ever worked with my child before or observed my child before? What is your unique take on this? And how will you help us today at the meeting? And we want to do that in a way that's friendly, that's not combative, but it certainly helps you understand what role everybody's playing. And the reason credentials are important or experience is because it helps you sort of prioritize the expert level, maybe the intermediate level and the novice level, the beginner level. And why is that important? Sometimes as parents, we in an IEP meeting need to say, Miss Jones, would you like more training or support? What can we do as a team to support you? Do we need to put into the IEP that we'll have someone come in and train you on those additional skills or protocols or services? And, we want to be careful not to do it in a way where we offend people because they are professionals, but at the same time, it can be so helpful to have someone open the door to that. And many teachers or service providers are secretly quite pleased that you have gone to bat for them to get more training or more help. Maybe they really need another person in the classroom to help during a segment of the day. Maybe they believe that your child does need a one-on-one parapro. So when you're kind of asking for the credentials and feeling out the experience level or the overwhelm level in a classroom, you can be a great proponent for additional supports and services, training for those people. And it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for them, and it's a win for your child. Okay, next bullet point. I keep honing in on this, but let's get organized, and we'll stay organized and prepared. Every year, request a copy of your child's records at the end of the school year. A lot of times teachers will shred papers. So you want to get a copy of everything, and your anxiety will come way down if you're organized and prepared. I don't know about you, but sometimes when my car's a mess or my purse is a mess or the kitchen is a mess, my anxiety climbs, and you can feel that way when you're going into meetings. If all of your paperwork is a mess, it can increase your anxiety because these meetings are important, and a lot of times very important decisions are being made. So anything you can do to bring yourself tremendous peace of mind is worth that little extra time. All right, and let's go digital, right? So we want to scan everything. If you can reduce paper and just have your binder with your essential documents, if you're great working off the laptop, if you want to take your laptop or your iPad into meetings, fabulous. Encouraging parents to do that. Get organized in a way that makes sense for you. If you're going to store all of your folders online, those document feeder scanners are gold. They are worth their weight in gold. So that's a helpful tip for parents who are like, Christy, I'm drowning in paper. I say, okay, let's see if we can put your system online. When you have a copy of the IEP, it's important not to write on the original. Just make a copy or use sticky notes. That way you'll always have a clean copy of that IEP. You can always get another one by emailing the teacher, but just to have a clean original copy is important if you ever needed to send it to somebody. And I already covered this in our last slide, but make sure those records are kept up to date. So once a year, make that FERPA request. FERPA is a records request. And just update that notebook. And now that we're experiencing some school closures, I know there's a lot of stress on parents who are maybe not working and or homeschooling their children. So getting organized is hard, but if you have any extra time at all, and you're gathering up records and work samples and your curriculum, maybe get a couple, maybe have Amazon deliver a couple of them different notebooks for you, different colors, or you can code them differently. And just start, as you go, just a little bit every day, start, 3-hole punching them and putting them in the binders and the notebooks. And then finally, you can actually review any testing protocols. So if you want to know how a test was delivered and you want to see the actual test, there are some tests, some standardized tests, where the protocols are private. So for testing security reasons, you can review them. You can't take a picture of them or make a copy, but you can review it. And this is sometimes helpful if you actually want to see, well, what were the questions asked? Or how was the test supposed to be given to my child? Well, that wraps up the actual presentation piece, the actual education of the top 10 things that I would love you guys to know about IEPs that I think you should know. And what we'll do now is we'll move to questions. We'll find out if you guys have any questions, how we can answer those. So I am going to move off of my screen share here. Well, and we'll see. I'm not sure what you guys can see and what you can't. But yeah, so I'm going to toggle back. And we'll see if there's any questions in the chat. Brian, do we have any questions from anybody, or have you been able to see?
Christy, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to send you back live.
Okay.
I am not sure about the chat feature right now. And so I don't see anything, and nothing has popped up. Would you mind if folks have questions? Do you have a phone number or email that they could?
Absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. So let me go back to the last slide there. I'll just pop that up on the screen.
Okay.
Okay, so there's two things here, and then I'll also give my phone number. So for more information, my website is calboslaw.com. And if you'd like a complimentary consultation for 20 minutes, I have an online scheduler. So any questions coming from today's presentation about anything we've talked about, or really If you guys have questions about how to handle the school closures and IEPs moving forward, please feel free to book with me there. It's calboslaw.as.me. And I would be happy to talk with you complimentary for 20 minutes. And then finally, my phone number is 404-667-3794. And I didn't list it on this slide because normally people go through the complimentary consultation, but if you have a pressing question and you don't see an appointment time that's good for you now that we're all staying at home, feel free, and I'll give you that number again. It's 404-667-3794. And that way, if anybody needs to reach out to me, they certainly can. You can leave me a message and I'll call you back. Just tell me what day and time works best for you, especially if you're doing the homeschool routine. I can help you out with that. And you can also connect with me on Facebook. Facebook is Calbos Law Firm. It's special education. You can follow me over there, and you can certainly send me a message. So